The Hope Diamond is a 45.52-carat blue diamond that has been linked to a long history of misfortune and tragedy. Originating in India, it was said to be stolen from a temple, cursing those who came into contact with it. Over the centuries, various owners of the diamond met unusual deaths. The most famous of these was Evelyn Walsh McLean, an American socialite who endured personal tragedies, including the deaths of her son and husband. The diamond is now housed at the Smithsonian Institution, but many still believe the curse lingers. Elmer McCurdy, an outlaw from the early 20th century, had an unexpected posthumous journey. After his passing in a 1911 shootout, his body remained unclaimed. An undertaker, seeing an opportunity, embalmed him and displayed the body to recoup costs. Over the years, McCurdy's preserved remains were passed between sideshows and carnivals, becoming a sideshow attraction. Decades later, in 1976, a TV crew filming in a California funhouse made a startling discovery. What they thought was a mannequin turned out to be McCurdy's real body. This surprising revelation finally led to his proper burial, more than 60 years after his death. In the early 1900s, the island of Spinalonga, located off the coast of Crete, was designated as a leper colony. It became a place of isolation for individuals afflicted with leprosy, a disease that was highly stigmatized at the time. The island functioned as a self-contained community where those affected lived, often cut off from the outside world until the colony was officially closed in the mid-20th century due to advancements in medical treatments. After the colony's closure, eerie tales began to circulate about a specific bus used to transport lepers between the mainland and Spinalonga. According to local lore, this bus became known for a series of bizarre and tragic events linked to it. Drivers and passengers who used the bus reportedly experienced a string of misfortunes such as sudden and unexplained illnesses, mysterious accidents, and even deaths. The story suggested that these occurrences were more than mere coincidence. The local legend attributes these misfortunes to a curse believed to be a manifestation of the suffering and despair that the bus had witnessed over the years. In 1984, German engineer Gunther Stoll became the center of a perplexing mystery known as the Yagdzi case. Stoll, who had been experiencing paranoia, suddenly exclaimed, "Now I've got it," and wrote the cryptic sequence, Yagdzi, before crossing it out. Later that night, he was found severely injured in his car, which was discovered in a ditch near the A45 motorway. Before passing away en route to the hospital, Stoll mentioned the presence of 4 unknown men. Investigations revealed that his injuries occurred prior to the car crash, suggesting he'd been struck by a vehicle elsewhere and then placed back into his car. The meaning of Yagdzi remains unsolved. In 1935, a man named Roland T. Owen checked into room 1046 at the Hotel President in Kansas City. Shortly after, he was found seriously injured and in poor condition in the room. The circumstances surrounding his condition were unusual. His identity remained a mystery, and the hotel staff reported strange sounds coming from the room. Despite investigations, no clear explanation was ever found, and his true identity remains unsolved. In 1587, a group of English settlers established the Roanoke colony on an island off the coast of North Carolina. When the colony's leader, John White, returned from England 3 years later, he found the settlement completely abandoned with no trace of the settlers. The only clue was the word Croatoan carved into a post. Despite extensive investigations, the fate of the settlers remains one of the greatest mysteries in American history. Some theories suggest they were killed by Native Americans, or even that they were lost to a storm or disease. In 1930, a trapper reported to authorities that he discovered a mysteriously abandoned Inuit village near Angikuni Lake in Canada. The entire village, over 25 people, had disappeared without a trace. No signs of a struggle or disturbance were found, and all their belongings, food supplies, and even the village dogs were left behind. Despite thorough investigations, no explanation for the disappearance was ever discovered, leading to speculation of alien abduction, mass hysteria, or a mysterious plague. In 1957, a young boy around 4 to 6 years old was found abandoned in a cardboard box in Philadelphia. Despite extensive investigations, his identity was never discovered, and no leads emerged regarding his family. Various theories have been proposed about his background, but his identity remains a haunting unknown to this day. When the Titanic sank in 1912, there were a few passengers who tried to save their beloved pets. Among them was a Pomeranian, a Pekingese, and a French bulldog. One of the dogs, a Pomeranian, was even seen in its owner's arms as she was rescued in a lifeboat. Tragically, many of the dogs perished alongside their owners, as pets were not considered a priority for rescue. In 1995, the Sampoong department store in Seoul, South Korea, tragically collapsed, killing over 500 people. The building's design was severely flawed, with structural changes made during construction that weakened its foundation. Despite reports of cracks in the walls and the building's instability, it continued to operate until its catastrophic failure. In 1950, Air India Flight 245 was making its descent to New Delhi when it crashed into the Himalayan mountains. The crash killed all 48 people aboard, including 15 crew members. Despite the plane's proximity to its destination, poor weather conditions combined with navigation errors led to the tragedy. The wreckage was discovered several weeks later, and it was found that many of the passengers had perished from injuries and exposure. In 1959, a group of 11 soldiers from the United States Army's 188th Airborne Infantry were involved in a training exercise in Alaska's harsh wilderness. The soldiers were tasked with a winter march where they were expected to traverse the mountainous terrain under freezing conditions without enough preparation for the extreme weather. The soldiers encountered unexpected difficulties, including heavy snowfall, freezing temperatures, and inadequate clothing. Additionally, they became lost and were unable to find their way back, compounding the difficulties of the already strenuous journey. With limited food supplies and inadequate equipment, the soldiers' physical and mental conditions rapidly deteriorated. In the end, only a few soldiers survived, and when rescuers arrived days later, they discovered the bodies of the others scattered across the landscape, many of whom had succumbed to hypothermia, starvation, and exhaustion. In the 18th century, Thomas Busby from North Yorkshire, England, faced a grim fate for his wrongdoings. According to local lore, Busby placed a curse on a chair in his favorite pub, warning that anyone who sat in it would encounter bad luck. Over time, stories emerged of unfortunate events linked to the chair, solidifying its reputation for bringing misfortune. To prevent any further incidents, the chair was eventually moved to a museum, where it now hangs from the ceiling, safely out of reach. In Russia's Kaliningrad region, the dancing forest is famous for its twisted and spiraling pine trees, with no clear explanation for their bizarre shapes. Some locals believe the forest is cursed, attributing the unnatural tree formations to supernatural forces or ancient rituals performed on the land. Others suggest that the strange shapes are due to unique environmental factors or genetic mutations.